Hi everyone, welcome to Malevolent Autopsy. This is a show hosted by patrons featuring patron content recorded live in the Invictus Discord as Malevolent is in its 5th season. This show is chock full of spoilers since every episode is meant to comment on a recent update. So if you want to avoid spoilers for all of Malevolent as it's been released to chapter 238 or part 48. Check out now and come back next time. Our episodes are archived in the Discord before they're released to the public, so you can always listen later. I'm Queen, my pronouns are she, her, and tonight I control Arthur's left Achilles tendon because mine is hurting pretty severely. I have Achilles tendonitis, and today it is chosen war.
Oh, I am so sorry. Do not envy you there. My name is Lambda. I use he, him pronouns. And today I am controlling Arthur's adrenal gland as I'm putting in overtime.
Oh boy. Yeah. Adrenal gland. That is, I would assume, a gland that controls adrenaline.
As well as cortisol and a few other hormones, I believe.
Yes, related. Well, welcome everybody. So lovely to see you guys. Thank you for filling in for Peppers. Lambda, you were on one of the first episodes of Autopsy, one of the first single digit ones, and you were in the audience for the very first one. You have been here a while, and I appreciate you coming and hanging out.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. All right. Well, let's get right into our chapter. Would you like to provide me with a summary?
I would love to. So, in Castle Carringford, Arthur was given the choice, or the patrons, of presenting the ring from the Order of the Fallen Star to Lord Everard as a gift, or to keep it to himself. The patrons chose to keep it. So at this point, Arthur gets up, and John starts to guide Arthur to his room, away from the other men, when Friar Horbrook joins them in the hallway and follows them, citing he does not want to be alone. As they walk, Horbrook chats with Arthur, who he believes to be Prince Warren, about Lord Everard's proclamations about everybody's history in the common room. In particular, he scoffs at being called a wizard, citing himself as a man of God, which Arthur challenges to his irritation. Arthur starts to press about Horbrook's reasons for being here, but the friar withdraws, unwilling to share. He does, however, mention that he feels the power of the Blackstone is not a power that is shared, and warns Arthur to sleep with one eye open before retiring to his room. While they are alone in their room, Arthur and John debate between them about Lord Everard's motivations, ultimately drawing the conclusion that he might be interested in seeing which of the men he's brought to the castle is, quote-unquote, worthy of the stone. At which point they hear Barnabas call there's been a murder in the common room. Arthur pounds on the friar's door and calls for him, but in these past few seconds the friar's unresponsive, and we are given the choice to either wait for the friar or head straight to the common room.
Very action-packed little chapter. It didn't take long, but there was so much in it.
Absolutely. I can't tell you the level of high-pitched squeal of utter delight that I let out the moment I heard Barnabas calling out that there's been murder. It was in my car. I was driving home from dropping off my wife at work, and just squealing as loud as I could.
Yeah, I was very excited with the murder. I was like, I remember listening to it and throwing both of my hands up in the air, and then immediately when they came back down, all capsing in my chat going, oh yes, yes, thank you, because that's what I wanted. That's what I was desperately hoping for. I know, I'm sure it was supposed to be obvious, but it still delighted me. I don't care that it was obvious. I love murder mysteries. They're my favorite. And so for Arthur to be trapped in a castle with a bunch of strangers and they're all suspicious and unknown, and then for someone to die is the dream. Very excited about that. I also was excited about the fact that we have one-on-one time with a character for the first time in a long time that didn't want to immediately kill us or something. And to truly be, because I know we had a brief conversation with Barnabas, but this was truly isolated time with somebody, and for it to be the friar was surprising to me. I have to wonder why that decision was made, because that's not a choice that we got to make or anything. So I think it's very pointed that Harlan chose to isolate us with the friar first.
Yeah, it's a great point. I will admit, even as I'm like looking back over the past few chapters, I'm sitting here like, oh, what do we know about the Friar from his introduction to us several chapters ago? I don't fucking remember. There's so many guys.
There's so many men, and notably as social media would put it, no one specific site, not a lot of women. No, I think that it was definitely a choice to put us with the Friar. I also think that, I mean, we've had patrons in the especially in the poll chat, specifically my buddy Vol Control, who drew a map layout of the area that we're in. So we're trying to kind of figure out where we are and what we're doing, and what direction we're going. And it's so much fun to work with a space, but my brain doesn't hold on to that stuff. So thank God there are people out there who are like, let me draw this for you, poor confused creature. Because if you don't give me a clue board, I'm not going to solve anything.
Yeah, I can usually create an image in my brain, but not after a single listen. Every chapter with like, Arthur, John, and 4 to 5 other people in the room, I'm like, huh? Who's talking? What?
Yeah, well, we're so used to listening out for Arthur and John's voices, and then when like a mysterious other voice comes in, I'm like, hold on, now there's too many. Hold on.
Hold
I
on.
have to keep up.
Getting flashbacks to when whatever his name was, Oswald or whatever the fuck, when he was in the show, and it was a large point of irritation because he would not shut up.
Oh
And I
yeah.
was like, there's 3 people talking at once. Come
Oh
on.
yeah, that O guy. I don't
Yeah, I
remember.
don't know.
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of people mention that when that those chapters were going on, how frustrating it was because for the first time, I think we had a really consistent instance of John talking over another character, which if Malevolent was trying to be more realistic, which I'm glad that it's not, it would have that happen a lot more often than it does. I don't think people realize how intentional it is for John to
Yeah.
be waiting for other people to finish talking, because dude could keep going and he doesn't. But when he doesn't like somebody, yeah, I mean it's easy for him to overpower that person's voice. So it's very interesting that that was utilized during that section, and it has not come back. So I was actually kind of happy to hear John getting cut off a few times by the Friar.
Hmm.
He kind of had to stop talking. He didn't get to finish his thought, which really brought me back to the reality of the situation that they're in, and how, yeah, Arthur and John they are working together, and Arthur is out of it right now, on top of the fact that they're surrounded by the unfamiliar and the unknown.
Yeah, I was going to point out, especially with Arthur, as sick as he is, he's not, John's having to pay special attention to what's happening around them. Like, he can't really rely on Arthur right now to pick up the little things that someone else is saying in the room. So it's almost like when someone starts talking, he has to stop
Yeah.
because he can't really rely much on Arthur at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think it speaks to how hard John is working to be upfront right now. I don't want to appropriate that term, but like to be way more present and responsible is the word I want
Mm.
for what's going on around them. Usually, like, oh my God, I remember when Arthur was dealing with John's occasional memory problems. I was just re-listening to The Train, The Father, and The Butcher last night, and I realized like John really becomes completely unhelpful when he's having those memory lapses, and he really pulls Arthur back when they're trying to move forward so many times in the narrative, because it's an important plot point. But if he was doing stuff like that now where he wasn't fully paying attention, or he didn't remember what somebody said, it would really screw shit up because Arthur is not fully present enough to absorb that information. I know that we had some people in the chat like Yami saying that in part 40 there was like 7 characters talking, and it was kind of hard to keep it all straight in your head. And that was on my mind too. Especially I was thinking about, there are some videos that Harlan made early on, I think like 2020, where he shows how he makes Malevolent, and I'm sure some things have changed since then, but he has like multicolored tracks for different sound files because he records all of the lines one at a time rather than actually going back and forth as himself. And so every character is on a different track. And I was thinking about if that's the way he still does things and every character is on a new track, it's like on top of the fact that all of the sound effects have a different track, and it would just sound so overwhelming.
Yeah. The one thing about the part 40 and like the 7 people though is that they weren't talking over each other as much.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's very true.
I was just saying, so like
Because
that's why I was like, I have a particular bone to pick with some of the episodes with
that one guy.
Yeah, the baloney man, Oscar Mayer.
I love that, like, it's becoming a thing that we don't say his name. It was just me, but I'm down for it. I'm with it.
I'm pretty sure I've gone on record before that I'm not the biggest fan of him. So I've always been in your corner.
Yes, high five on that.
On that topic. Yeah, little high five. Woo.
Well, Control says, I am loving how John is feeding Arthur lines and helping guide the conversation. And yeah, I agree. I appreciate that John has more of a front and center in these chapters. And then I see Graham said the train, the father, and the butcher, new holy trinity just dropped, which is very good. Very good. I found myself having to grin and bear listening to the father again. No, I'm just kidding. It's not bad. It's just, yeah, for me, it's slow. Mizra says John is doing such a good job keeping up with the descriptions to Arthur, following the conversations, and taking the lead on what's to say and what's important to try and learn here. And Faye says, I think Arthur has had a stress headache for most of the past 6 months, to be honest.
Yeah, speaking of that man's adrenal gland, it's probably fucked to an incredible extent.
Yeah. Yami says, in 40, it would throw me off hearing the Vizier speak when John did. And Roses of Envy replied, the overlap was so eerie, I loved it. And Fish went off and got a screen cap specifically of when, at the beginning of the chapter, when Arthur is saying, no, I feel very rough, John. And John saying, I'm sorry, but you need to keep it together. And Arthur says, I know. And John says, you're doing great, just stay with me.
God, especially when the phrase stay with me was one that Arthur told John multiple times during season 4 when John would have his memory lapses. It was like that is an exact thing that Arthur had said to him during those points. Stay with me.
Yeah, that's so significant. And another thing that Fish points out was the fact that Arthur's gotten to the point where when John's asking if he's okay, that he just says no, which is terrifying because Arthur is one of those people,
king of repression.
He's super one of those people who works through illness way too often and even denies, there's a lot that I think Arthur tries to push back and repress, but he must be feeling really shitty if he's like, nope, I'm not okay, this is my limit.
Which is an incredible pressure cooker for us to be in at the moment with Arthur, king of I don't talk about what's wrong, is admitting immediately and openly to how terrible that he feels. And there's a murder in the next room, and we're like at the start of this murder mystery.
And that's something that I think I pointed out last episode, where I was trying to say, like, in a murder mystery, there's always some element of time pressure, and it just depends on where it's coming from. And for me, I know that some of the time pressure is going to be the fact that, like, Everard says he's going to show us the Blackstone at a specific time the next day or whatever. But for me, I think the time pressure is definitely coming from Arthur's sickness and how quickly that's going to start making him not just like his faculties weaker, but also like his physical capabilities, his cognitive thinking. I mean, I just wonder, I was even listening to the chapters before and I was thinking about how frequently Arthur has to interrupt his own words with coughing, and how I was impressed when he got through a couple of sentences without doing it. That's like a really bad sign.
Yeah. And you had just mentioned the Butcher episode. I was also sitting here thinking about, with not just his mental faculties, his physical ones weakening, we're at a real disadvantage if we get into a situation where we need to physically escape from someone who's trying to kill him again.
Yeah, for sure.
As opposed to those episodes.
Well, and people were saying, too, on the subject of running, trying to escape, that people were saying, if we go too quickly to the murder scene, that Arthur's gonna fucking keel over, because he can't be running in this condition. And I don't think that it's literal. I don't think he's literally gonna run. But I also don't blame them for that, because I just feel like at every turn there's something wrong, or there's something going on with Arthur, and he's constantly in some kind of agony now. Doing even the most mundane tasks like talking has become like arduous for him. Do you have any particular feelings about any other character in Malevolent that maybe isn't around right now?
Oh, Queen, that's a loaded question. You don't
Do
just
you have any do you have any feelings about any characters that have similarities to Arthur that aren't around right now and their survival is nebulous?
Queen, come on, you can't just ask a man about his husband in Spain like that.
I hate to tell everybody, but Lambda and I are like about the same level of insane about Charlie. And I want to point out before we move on from the segment that Harlan keeps putting Noel's theme in places. And I can't tell if it's just because he thinks the music is appropriate for the moment, or if that's supposed to mean something. And my incredibly Noel-pilled brain is like, it means something. I'm
Queen,
supposed to think he's coming to save. What if he's our knight in shining armor?
I
What if he
have
comes in at the last moment to save us?
I have been actively trying to avoid letting myself go down that rabbit hole. Because every time I hear that theme come up in the show, I'm sitting here like, now I gotta sit with the transcript and like really examine this scene. How does it parallel Noel? What can it tell us about our beloved Charlie? It's a problem. You are enabling me right now. You are making it worse.
Look, nobody told me I couldn't talk about my husband. Look, I just think Fish says, I think it's meant to just show off a sense of connection and camaraderie between Arthur and John. But then why don't they play something else? Why doesn't Harlan pick a different song or write a different song? I just think it's gotta mean, I think that there are so many choices in Malevolent that are so specific and intentional and on purpose. Music evokes emotion, and I just can't help but feel like we're meant to connect that song with Noel. I mean, it literally has his name in the
Yeah, I was gonna say it certainly does bring up emotions for me. Usually emotions of extreme love and complete agony at the thought of Charlie.
I just feel like, I don't know, maybe, I know he's not really relevant to the arc at all, but he is relevant to John, and the fact that John saved him. That was the first time John projects, it's for Noel. And we're hearing his theme again, and this is the arc all about John. I'm putting it out there now. I promise this won't be the whole episode of Autopsy, but like it could be. I just want everyone to know it could be.
It really could be.
I'm holding back for you, listener.
I ain't holding back for shit. Oh, Fish says John may be trying to draw upon what he remembers of Noel with this investigation arc he's gonna be on. Fish! Why would you say that?
John canonically thinks that Noel hung the moon. I'm sorry.
Yes!
It's just fact. And like the fact that specifically, okay, by the way, I just want everyone to know, I know it was at like 2 a.m. for Harlan or whatever, but he did say that for Halloween, John would dress up as Charlie. And I had a lot of feelings and thoughts about that. When did he say that? He said it during,
was that during Extra Life?
Yes, during Extra Life. That's what it was called.
I cannot believe he would say that. Like I slept for 4 hours during Extra Life. He waited and was just like, oh, Lambda's going to bed. I'm going to start talking about Charlie. Come on.
Somebody asked through a donation, what would they be through for Halloween? And I blacked out because I don't even remember the other characters, and I don't even remember what the other answers were. I just remember him going, and John would dress up like Noel. And I had to stand up for a minute and take a deep breath because I could not believe. Dude, he is so cagey about answering any of those kinds of questions. And the fact that he answered this one was a big deal because I don't blame him. His word has been taken way too often as canon when it's not meant to be, and he's just being silly. And I know that's exactly what we're doing right now. That to me says so much about John's relationship with Noel. And let me be totally clear and transparent. This isn't me being a shippy fangirl. I'm not even talking romantically. I just mean like as a bond as human beings that John has a deep connection with the first person to acknowledge him outside of Arthur and to treat him like his own person. That was a big moment. How did we get to talking about this when the chapter is about a murder mystery?
Queen, you've lost me when we're talking about the current chapter. It's all Charlie now. We started here talking about Noel's theme and how it keeps cropping up in these chapters.
Okay. All right. Moving on. Okay. So before we move on from the chapter summary and into other things, I do briefly want to bring up um what you might make of what the friar said about his own feelings on like all of his accreditation, I suppose. I don't know what you would call it. Talking about like the fact that he's not really proud of being called a wizard.
So I've had some great thoughts and feelings on this, which I feel like this might be a pointed question. I think this guy's a dweeb. Tell me you can't cast lightning bolt without telling me that you can't cast lightning bolt. Because what kind of wizard isn't like, I'm a fucking wizard? He's not even cool about it.
He's really not.
He's not even cool about it.
Like, who wouldn't want to be called a wizard? I don't know. I main a wizard, so maybe I'm the wrong person to fucking talk to. But like,
I'm a cleric main, yeah. And I'm like, why are you not more excited to be a wizard?
I love wizards. It was my first class, and it's the class that I now favor. I know how to play wizard like the back of my hand. I love it. Everybody thinks it's too complicated, but it's not. You just have to get good.
It's just in from Queen.
I'm really not that bright, and if I can figure it out, I think anyone can figure it out. I want to say that it was real fucking bold of Friar Harbrook to be like, if you don't mind, I think I'll join you. I'd rather not be alone in this castle. Like, I don't care what you would rather and rather not do, and what if I do mind, sir? Like, I don't know, it's just very pushy. I don't like it.
Yeah, get your bald tonsure wearing ass away from us. Tonsure? I don't know how that's pronounced.
I'm hoping that shit is not canon.
I hope it is. Show my devotion to the Lord by looking like an utter fucking loser.
Roses of Envy says Friar was being real forward and pushy. I agree. When he called us a heathen, like, how rude. Yeah, like, we're supposed to trust this dude, or I guess we're supposed to be warm to him when he just called us heathen. And we'll talk about this later in far more detail, but people are trying to argue that we should be trying to make, get brownie points with this dude. I don't think we're going to get brownie points with this guy when he definitely knows that we don't believe in God. So, there's that. Then there was also this specifically this exchange about, like, John says he's hiding something. They all are. Well, John, sweetie, honey, sweetheart.
Listen,
yeah, of course.
He's saying it for Arthur's benefit.
Arthur says, so what do you make of all this then? You deny to be anything other than a kindly monk. And Friar Harbrook says, I claimed no such thing. Which is weird, because if you want to appear innocent, I would not deny it that hard, but okay. And then Arthur, I loved this comeback when Arthur says, well, then what have you done to deserve this gift, this witnessing of the Blackstone, the way Everard has put it? And then John describes the friar as looking kind of questioning and says that he should press him for more information. And Arthur goes on to talk about, like, there's more to these people. We all want to, know what's going on. And their desire to push the boundaries of their respected fields is exactly why they're here. No different than you, no different than me. And that really seems to have sunk its teeth into the friar. So I'm wondering if he's got a lot of, like, I mean, he obviously has a lot of reservations about what he truly is up to and what he studies and what he's seen. But I wonder how he reconciles that with his whole, like, monk thing.
Yeah. For as much as I'm not really interested in waiting for him, like, I can see a lot of folks are talking about, that he was sated to study life and death, talking about he's probably a necromancer of some kind. And for as much as I'm not terribly interested in waiting for him at this particular moment, I am looking forward to getting to know him a little bit more. Just kind of knowing, because I think one of the things that Malevolent tends to do really well, especially in season 5 that I've noticed, is that characters have different philosophies and ways that they justify their behavior and bring those frameworks and moralities, like, into the show. Like, the obvious one would be how the witch represented a very different framework, a very different way of viewing the world than how John or Arthur view it. And she had her own legitimate reasons for believing the things that she did and defended them pretty damn well, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And so it's like I can smell what Harlan's cooking. Like it's like there's some sense wafting out of the kitchen over there about how these different men may have done morally reprehensible things, how they justify those behaviors to themselves, to others, that I am really looking forward to possibly sinking our teeth into, ideally if they're not the body lying in the common room.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. I'm just briefly skimming over the chapter transcript here to make sure I didn't miss anything that I wanted to talk about, but I think it's interesting that John says, "My point is, perhaps this is less about creating doubt and more about finding one of them that is," and then Arthur says, "worthy."
Mm.
So I think that it's very interesting to imagine maybe there's maybe the answer isn't necessarily like manipulating these people to gain their like help, understanding, or trust, but to try and understand them better, like to understand if they are the right person for the Blackstone, or what, if so, what makes them special in a way that, oh, what's cool is that, like, what makes you special was the big question that Kane asked Arthur, and I'm wondering if that's going to come back,
Ooh.
because if all of these men have something that make them special slash worthy, that means there's definitely something about Arthur slash Warren, who's now dead, that is going to have to come up to make him worthy of the Blackstone. Now, we don't even necessarily know if worth or worthiness is required to handle this artifact, but I would not be shocked.
And we also don't know, like, by whose standards are we considered worthy? Like, we have no idea, like, from what perspective Everard views people and would consider someone worthy. I want to point out a conversation that's happening in chat right now. Folks are talking about the idea of John projecting out of Arthur to prove his worth in that way. And Fish bringing up, like, we can't do that. It drains Arthur's life force. He'll fall over dead. And Yami points out that we have the talisman. And I feel like for once in my life, I just felt a neuron fire. If the friar is a necromancer, if his study is in the realm of life and death, that talisman might become really important for dealing with the friar.
Yeah. I might do something crazy. I don't know if this is possible. Probably not, because I didn't give enough advance notice, and this is pretty wild to say in the middle of an episode. Um, Graham, I know that you're in the chat right now because you're always in the chat. Are you able to get on the stage with us?
Is it because you hate me and you don't want to listen to me talk? Yeah,
No.
it's because you hate me.
No.
Yep, you all heard it. You all heard it.
No, no, no. I think it would be way more, it would be way more sonically pleasing to hear Graham talk about the Blackstone and what we know about it so far than have me read out Graham's inevitable text wall. So if Graham would like to come up and speak about the Blackstone, that would be great. Okay, hold on. I am going to. Hi, Graham. Welcome
Hi.
to Malevolent Autopsy.
Oh my
You
God.
got on a little bit earlier than your 50 episode promise, but
Yeah,
it's
I
it's
never
relevant.
I didn't expect to be on here so early. Oh my gosh. I'm so excited to be here.
So Graham, what do we know about the Blackstone so far? Tell me everything.
Well, okay. So the Blackstone is part of sort of a collection of artifacts is the best way to put it. There are 3 stones and the obelisk. And the 3 stones each represent a part of Azathoth. The gray stone is the spirit of Azathoth, the black stone is the flesh of Azathoth, and the crimson stone, or the red stone, is kind of how it's been fandom named. Although in the files it is the crimson stone, but it's never called that in the games, I don't believe, because it's not really addressed directly very often. The crimson stone is the soul of Azathoth. And so they all landed in different areas of the world, like way, way back when, as along with the obelisk. and the obelisk sort of like metaphysically represents where like Azathoth in his prison. Like it's where Azathoth is trapped, but not in like a literal way. Like if you cracked open well, I don't think you could crack open the obelisk, but if you like split it like an egg, I don't think he would be hiding in there.
Are you sure? Because that sounds fun.
Azathoth omelets, everybody. And so the 3 stones plus the obelisk are required to wake Azathoth and set him free, and essentially end the multiverse, because all of reality exists in Azathoth's dream. So if he wakes up, it's bye-bye for everybody. And so each of the stones has a unique power. Obviously, the gray stone has been discussed in Malevolent, and the crimson stone gives people it has the ability to control people, which is sort of vaguely discussed in Call of Cthulhu 2, but we never get a lot of specifics of how it works, so I can't go into a lot of specifics here. But the black stone, what we specifically know about the black stone is that it shares a power with the obelisk because it's made out of the same material, which there's a very cool metaphorical thing to be said there about the flesh being the prison, you know, if you want to get philosophical with it. But the obelisk and the black stone very notably have the power of grinnerdom, which is literally how it's phrased in the files.
Oh, that's hilarious.
The the power of grinnerdom, the ability to create grinners when it comes in contact with blood. And really, so I know a lot of people have theorized about the Blackstone being like specifically special, but I really think the reason it is, well, first of all, Kane can't see any of the stones or the obelisk. That's a very like established fact.
How was that established? Was that part of a game, or is that just something that like he's said? And so, because we know that he can't see the Blackstone.
It's sort of like, I suppose it's very established in the games because it's a whole plot point about how he has to go through these convoluted like hoops to get people to bring the stones and the obelisk to him because he can't seek them out. Then it's also stated in the files, and then in Malevolent, he says, you know, he can't see the Blackstone, which tracks with what he says about the other, with not what he says, but what Nyarlathotep says about the other stone in the game.
Right. Okay.
And he actually directly references that. Sorry, you're getting a little bit of a tangent here for a fun fact. He directly references that Nyarlathotep in Intermezzo. So that's a fun little tidbit. He references the end of Call of Cthulhu 2 directly.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. Yeah, that's right.
yes. So since we know that Cain has killed that Nyarlathotep, and he also got the information about where the Blackstone is from that Nyarlathotep, because that Nyarlathotep had obtained that information from a kid named Sammy Wiley. It's a whole story. He obtained that information from that Nyarlathotep. It stands to reason, since that Nyarlathotep already had the Crimson Stone, the Grey Stone, and the Obelisk, that Cain would very easily be able to get his hands on all 3 of those as well. And we know he knows where the Greystone is. So at least my personal opinion is that the reason there's so much emphasis on the Blackstone is not necessarily because it's special or different than the other stones, but because it's the last one Cain needs. And I don't think Cain wants to wake Azathoth. I think he has something worse planned, but that's a personal vibe I get from him. He doesn't seem like the daddy boy. Um,
Yeah, totally. I I wonder specifically, do we know anything about the interactions required of the Blackstone? Like, is there any specific thing? I know that there has been mentions of blood being needed on that stone for certain things and things like that. Do we know anything about the interactions with the stone?
Not a lot. The Blackstone is the only stone we never saw on screen in any of the Call of Cthulhu games. So everything we know about it comes from the files. And basically, all it says in the files is that it landed in Europe and that when it comes into contact with blood, it makes grinners. So it could function like the obelisk does, but it also could not. And it could maybe have a secret special ability we don't know about. I wouldn't put that past Harlan. So it's very much still a mystery out of the three stones. And even with the Grey Stone, what we learn about the Grey Stone in the Call of Cthulhu games is very much it's expanded on by what Larson and then Kane says in part 40, well, part 40 and Intermezzo. So I imagine that the Blackstone will be a very similar case where it's sort of building off of that initial concept, but diving more into it. So I'm excited to see what Harlan does.
Yeah, that will be super interesting. Thank you. Lambda, I know that I told you to be quiet for audio reasons, but do you have anything that you want to respond with?
Not necessarily. I've been kind of just enjoying watching chat go by, listening to this. The interesting thing is that like how Harlan has stated that there's still like quote unquote like lots more season 5 to go. And I'm like, oh, the Blackstone just downstairs. I was like, I think what interests me the most about the situation is what's gonna keep us from getting to it right away.
Well, I feel like part of it might be the ominous lady in front of the door.
With a Schrodinger's sword, yeah.
Graham, we have a question in chat for you. Yami wants to know,
Oh,
does the Nyarlathotep from Call of Cthulhu 1 is an arcane, right?
we never meet Nyarlathotep in Call of Cthulhu 1. We meet Nyarlathotep in Call of Cthulhu 2. He very heavily implies that he is the Nyarlathotep from the Malevolent / Call of Cthulhu 1 universe. But okay, well, there is a theory that I am very fond of, which I am not the originator of.
I will pause to first
I'm
of all,
sorry.
no, don't be sorry. I was just gonna say, first of all, I want to briefly say Yami said two, I meant two, whoever Conrad was. And I know you
Oh.
probably can't see the chat
Oh.
because you're on your phone.
Yes, Call of Cthulhu 2, we know for sure that he is not Kane because Kane directly references killing him.
Okay.
Like he straight up says when that segment he's saying it's like he trails off and he's like, well, it was me, but it was not me, but it was, and then he starts laughing like a maniac and says, he's referring to the fact that it was another Nyarlathotep, but not technically him. So we know for sure it's not Kane.
Great. Thank you for that. And if you would like to share your theory before you go, I will allow you to do so under the condition that you preface it is not confirmed.
It is absolutely not confirmed, and I doubt it ever will be confirmed. And it is not originally my theory. I got it from Liz. I think Liz originally picked it up from Carly. Don't quote me on that. But it's the idea that the Black Goat in Call of Cthulhu 1 is that timeline's version of Nyarlathotep that would later become Kane. And there's actually a surprising amount of evidence for it. But like I said, I doubt it ever will be confirmed, and I don't really think it's relevant, but it's a really fun concept.
I love that. Well, Graham, thank you so much for popping in. I really appreciate it, and it was so lovely to finally hear you.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I can't believe I've been on Autopsy now. This is crazy to me. Oh my gosh.
You have
Don't
been
worry,
a guest
I'll
on
still make it to
Autopsy.
50.
Yes, and we're gonna have you on plenty. I know we're gonna need you, especially as we come to season 6. I'm sure things will get deeper and we'll need more explanations from you. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your coming by.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, on your way out, I have this screen. It's just going to ask you a few little questions.
Okay.
You'll get it. You'll get it
How
through
do I-
through DM.
Yeah.
How do I don't know how to stop.
I love you so much. I'll just kick you out of the stage.
Okay, I don't know how to leave.
That's
I've never
okay.
done
I'll
this.
I'll kick you out. It's okay. I got you. There we go. All right. I've kicked Graham out.
I like the visual that you did. Just grab Graham by like the back of his shirt and just heave ho and heft him out the door.
I threw him out a window. Let's be honest. I went, oh, here, explain this lore shit that I don't get and I'm too lazy to read about. Done? Okay, bye. I launched him out the window. Okay, well, thank you so much, Graham, for coming on. We're going to talk about the poll. I think we're going to run a few minutes long here tonight because that was that was great, but I forgot. Like, I didn't think about the time. Um, so luckily, Lambda and I are in agreement on this poll, so there's not going to be like a lengthy arguing session. Although I do want to make sure that we definitely go over some of the points for the other side, just so that people in the past
Yeah,
slash future will know what the perspectives were. So the poll for this week was chapter 238's poll was wait for the friar at 40% or head to the common room at 60%, and it was 291 votes total. So we're and this is Friday night like usual, so we are pretty close to the end here, and I doubt this is gonna tip, but you never know. There could be a flip at the toward the very end, but that's a good 40% gap, a 20% gap. Ooh.
Yeah.
And my vote was to head to the common room, as was Lambda's, I believe.
Yes, mine as well. However, I definitely do understand like some of the reasons why it might be good to wait for the friar. I think the most obvious benefit that I could see would be to have somebody with us who can immediately vouch for where we were just a few minutes ago. However, like, at least for me, I'm like, I don't think that's quite as important at the moment, especially since he thinks we're a heathen. I think he needs a new haircut. And so it's like, I don't know how positively he's going to feel or act towards us anyway.
Yeah, so in general, just kind of a high, wow, I was about to say high level concept like I'm at work. The kind of the high level overview of people's arguments. No, the if you break it down, the arguments come down to, if you wait for the friar, there has been a general idea that could either score brownie points with the friar, and maybe he will in the future help us out, become our ally, in some way feel better or warmer towards us, potentially even be our alibi to confirm that we were with him at the time of the murder, something like that. There's also been an argument that the friar, we want more of a connection with another person, and so far the friar has been the only person that we've been able to talk to alone. We did get Barnabas, but that was not in an isolated situation. There's also been some conversations about the friar's usefulness and how getting closer to him might help us, down the line, like we were talking about earlier in this episode about maybe if, he's a necromancer or something like that. So there's definitely some good points. If I missed anything, I'm looking to the friar folks in the chat who want to provide their reasoning, and I'm happy to read that out.
Say, Yami mentioned alibi, yes, I don't care if he's an ally.
Right. And then at least, Lambda and I have a pretty good concept of what the common room arguments are, because we were both in the chat at the same time, kind of helping each other, supporting each other for once, instead of wanting to kill each other.
It's only happened a few times through the entire course that we've both been patrons. I was like, I think you and I have been able to count, like, it's less than 10 votes in the dozens that you and I agree.
I think it's like 5 out of all of the votes that we've been patrons for together. We really don't we agree about as much as Peppers and I agree. I would say maybe even less.
Probably a little less.
Yeah, Lambda and I have the same types of fights as Peppers, but we do them very publicly in poll chat, which is like a whole other can of worms. You might think that Lambda and I also hate each other. We don't. We're very good friends.
We may be opponents on the battlefield of poll chat. We are brothers and sisters in arms of the Charlie fan club. So
yes. Anyway, so some of the arguments for common room have been that the more important thing is to rush to the scene of the crime, not only because we might be able to get some of the vibes of the room, but also because we want to see who else is already there, who takes the longest to get there, if anyone's missing, what the body looks like, all of those aspects being very quick to get all of that. Some people are really hoping that we get to touch the body with Arthur's cursed little fingies, like dealing with, having those visions of how people died and all that crap. Some people are talking about the idea of Arthur potentially not, wanting to be there when called, so that there's no reason for them to wonder where he is and what took him so long. Like, maybe that would be a suspicious idea. There are also definitely people out there who are on both sides of the aisle because they can see both sides, which, I mean, I can see both sides, but I just think that personally, my whole thing with the common room is I don't understand what the point of waiting for the friar is. It's not so much that I think it's a worse option, it's that I don't I don't agree that there's a lot to be gained from doing that other than satisfying curiosity or being stubborn and persistent, which are totally valid, but not my interest. I will point out something that everybody keeps forgetting. The doors, Arthur tried to open the door. Ergo, he can't get in. Ergo, it is locked or barred in some way. We have to wait for the friar to open it in for whatever reason.
Yeah, I wanted to paraphrase some stuff that Autumn posted in the chat of their reasons for wanting to stay to check for the friar. The obvious one being, if alive, the friar could serve as our alibi. If the friar is absent, the possibility exists Arthur could root around in his things to get information, as it would be more difficult to search his room later while everyone's on high alert after the murder. And this one, I'm so sorry, Autumn. It was very nice of you to like type this over into Autopsy. I am gonna argue with you a little bit as I go. If the crime scene has been tampered with, it has to have been done so before the shout. After the shout, there's too much traffic around the area to make any meaningful changes, which means that even if Arthur arrives immediately, he would still be too late to see the crime scene as it was, meaning the only benefit of running to the scene is being there early. I strongly disagree, because people can fuck up the crime scene without malicious intent. Because people, when they are in stressful and panic-inducing situations, like discovering that somebody's been murdered in this creepy-ass little castle, but they might start moving shit. Someone could just as easily bump into something and kind of fuck up the room. And so the idea is getting to see it before anybody intentionally or inadvertently fucks with it. And the last thing Autumn that had brought up was, I don't think people would find it too suspicious if Arthur came a bit later, because they'd see him walk out of the corridor where his room was, decidedly in the opposite direction. Without malevolent intent. Fuck! Sorry. I think I just peaked my audio. Fuck, that would have been so good.
Okay, so Autumn says if he walks out with the friar, he has an alibi. If he walks out without him, the friar then can point out how the... Okay, hold on. Am I reading this wrong, or was it typed wrong? I think so. Both. If he walks out with the friar, he has an alibi. If he walks out without him, meaning the friar, then he can point out how the friar isn't there and the shift suspicion onto him. Got it.
So either becomes our friend or throw him under the bus as a scapegoat, which I could get behind that latter one, mostly because I think that would be fun. But at the same time, like, here's the other thing. Last chapter, Everard kind of called us out as Warren for being like a super charismatic manipulator. And if we start being like trying to throw blame onto other people, like immediately for murder, like, well, I couldn't get a hold of him, maybe he was involved. I think that's going to make us look even more obviously suspicious and like we're just a big fat liar, which we kind of are. We are masquerading as a prince whose severed head we have in a bag, but they don't need to know that.
Yeah, one of the things I was pointing out was that the longer that we stay in sustained contact with people, the more likely it is we're going to get found out.
Exactly.
We already were immediately suspicious to the friar, even though he fell for it in the end. Like, we're clearly not going to do the best job of pretending to be Warren, especially since we fucked up on asking any relevant questions about Warren. So we really don't know very much about him other than what Everard just told us. And while you could make a case for that being enough to kind of get our feet steady, it's already kind of been revealed to us through the narrative that we are transparent. We're not going to do a good job at lying this long. So the longer that goes on, the more danger Arthur is in. And I think avoiding having to have these long, isolated conversations with people where we are alone with them and there's not a lot of people in the room and there's no way to deflect if they ask too many questions about us and what we're doing, and if they see the severed skull come rolling out of our bag at any point. Like, there's a lot about us that it can be easily revealed on accident and could fuck everything up. So I'm very anxious about letting Arthur be too close to any one person. And it already kind of spooked me that we had to walk down a long dark hallway with the friar alone, and he almost confronted us about how different we were. I'm not eager to have more conversations like that, and so waiting for him at the door for him to come out to be alone with us again, I don't think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I also think that wait for the friar is phrased specifically very passively, and I don't think we're supposed to be I mean, you could argue that, I'm trying to see it from both sides. You could argue that waiting for the Friar is a more passive action and therefore would be smarter since Arthur is not on his best. Like, he shouldn't be on the offense. You shouldn't take the really active moves if you're trying to be sneaky or if you're trying to get away with something. But I would say that going to the common room where lots of people are would be smarter to me because I would be able to turn the conversation back on other people easier and ask other people questions and get distracted, like, distract people easier than having to just be alone with a guy who's already pretty nervous. He already thinks everyone's going to die. So,
Yeah.
I think everyone's aware in the castle though that, they're all on thin ice.
Yeah. Roses of Envy says, let John take the reins. John wanted us to go to the common room. Let's trust his judgment. He's been showing great investigative skills in the past few episodes. I thought it was nice. Mr. also brought up the Leave It Be vote from the Bug episode, which I've seen brought up a couple of times. And I want to make something clear. The reason why we thought Bug was good now is because there were like subtle hints and reasons for us to legitimately believe that taking a second before acting was the better thing to do. Because immediately before Mr. Baloney was telling us to not cut his arm off, he was repeating that over and over and over. And it's like, well, it could just be the panic of Arthur being like, well, I guess I'm going to cut off your arm. And I mean, this theory ultimately ended up being incorrect, but I think it was part of the reason why that gut feeling that we think Bug is good now stuck around is because we knew that he had just been reading the bestiary not that long before, and the idea was floated to, or sorry, cut it out. I've been saying cut it off this entire time, but the option was to cut it out or leave it be. Sorry about that. But the idea was floated that perhaps he had read something in the bestiary that had informed him of what was happening. He knew not to try to cut the Bug out. And so while that wasn't correct, I think that combined with his immediate reaction of like, no, don't cut it out, kind of gave us enough pause to think maybe we wait half a second, and we did, and that's when he said to cut it off. Whereas in this particular situation, I'm not really seeing any of those like tiny little background signs that it might be better for us to wait a second.
Yeah, I don't see any hints in the narrative so far that tell us we should be going slower or wait, or I'm not picking up any of the hints that we would normally get around a vote like this. I also don't know if it applies to, see, because Arthur right now is screaming and banging on the door. If that's not enough to get this guy to open the door, I don't think he's going to. Or if he does, he's not going to be willing to do whatever we're telling him we need to do. Like, oh, we don't know if Arthur's going to say we have to go to the common room and we have to, do whatever. But I don't know. Well, I guess we'll see. I know that I don't think that we're in for a flip, but I do want to point out one more little thing that Roses of Envy said. Let John take the reins. John wanted us to go to the common room. Let's trust his judgment. He's been showing great investigative skills the past few episodes. I do think that with us having fucked up the write-in vote and getting Arthur sick faster, which, by the way, yes, we were told pretty much directly that, like, because we fucked up the write-in vote, Arthur got sick faster than he was normally going to. Because that happened, I think now it's possible to lean on that a little bit more and get like, if I were Harlan and I was writing these polls and making up the story, I would think that, okay, guys, we just proved that Arthur's not good at making decisions when he's this sick. If you are questioning Arthur's logic, maybe you're right to do so, and maybe you should listen to John, who is not coughing every 10 seconds. So I think for me, that's enough to seal the deal. At this juncture, I think it's more solid to put faith in John and how he has been the more level-headed one in control so far. I think for me, there's so much evidence to back up that we need to head to the common room first and not wait for the Friar, that it becomes more of like, why would I wait for the Friar rather than we shouldn't? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
I think we are close to wrapping up, but is there anything that you would like to share with us, Lambda, as far as like anything that you are excited about in this moment in time as a patron, as a fan of Malevolent, that you want to share with folks?
I am so glad you brought this up. Although, really fast, right before I move off the topic of this current chapter, I do want to say that John said, "and there's the rub," while he was talking to Arthur, and my little ears perk up because that's another Shakespeare quote. That's another Hamlet, baby. One
Ding,
more
ding,
for the
ding, ding.
board. Had to bring that up. A little bit of self-indulgence. But one thing I have been becoming increasingly involved in lately has been Malevolent fanzines. And so I thought I could talk a little bit about, like, at this point in time, what the state of the world for Malevolent fans in terms of fanzines is like. So as far as I'm aware, there are only two like fully completed fanzines out there. The first one being You Call It Madness, but We Call It Love. That was a digital only one that was done for the 3rd anniversary of Malevolent. So it was shared on April 1st of 2023. That one's got lots of full page artwork, fics, and poetry, something for each episode of Malevolent from episodes 1 through 27, which at the time puts it around, they would have started work on this around like October, November of 2022. The other one was This Too Shall Pass, which was done in the summer of 2023, which was the first printed zine as far as I am aware. And then we have 3 zines that are currently in process right now.
Jesus, we are busy for a small fandom.
We sure are. There are 3 zines right now. Biggest one being the Malevolent Tarot zine, which I have seen a bunch of people bringing up already. The product is essentially production of a full deck of 78 tarot cards with, I believe we unlocked like gold foiling on the stretch goals. It's got an
Yes.
accompanying guidebook that's going to include minifics, which I'm writing a few of those.
Yeah, we have a lot of Autopsy fans in the chat right now and in general who are all working on that. I know I'm the writing mod, so I vetted all of the writing, which I didn't have much to do. Everyone was an amazing writer. There's lots of big names on there that I'm sure people would recognize in this date at this date and time. I know that like there's so many people I can't even remember like everybody, but there's a very good chunk of folks, big artists, big names that I think everyone's gonna be really excited about, and they're gonna be able to like publish and sell their art once these zines have all been shipped. So you will probably eventually see the art for that, if you were not able to purchase the zine at that point in time.
Yeah, I was going to suggest the pre-sales for the Tarot zine are closed, but you can also follow the Tarot zine's social medias on Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram for potential after sales. They have art previews and like meet the artists on there. So you can go follow different artists and check out what some of the art was. And you can then possibly in the future be able to buy things from those artists. But yeah, that one I'm really excited, really looking forward to. It's going to be beautiful. I think the last time we heard they had like over 300 pre-orders for the Tarot zine.
Yeah, they had significantly more orders than they ever expected to get. So I'm very glad they did pre-orders and not just like a bulk shipment that then sold and sold out of. But there are a lot of people in the fandom now than there were compared to the last time they ran a zine. The same group ran a zine.
Yeah, it is insane how much is going on with the Tarot zine right now. But I also want to highlight the 2 others, one of which is a really small one that I spotted on Tumblr. It's called Penelky in the Dreamlands. It's going to be a digital-only zine that is based around a post-Soviet AU for Malevolent. They have 10 artists and a cosplayer as contributors. They are on Tumblr at Penelky in the Dreamland Zine. They're also present on Telegram for Russian-speaking fans. The art style, like the colors, look so beautiful just on like the graphics and preview art that they have on their page. I am actually really looking forward to that one and really excited to point out that that one is currently in production. And I will post like a direct link to their Tumblr in the chat after the recording. Just so like everyone please go check out Penelky in the Dreamlands. I was like, it was really cool. Like I love to see when people can bring their own like cultural backgrounds, their own life experiences into Malevolent. And there's a surprisingly large number of like Eastern European, like Polish, Russian fans of Malevolent.
Yeah, we have Malevolent has a really big international audience. I'm always shocked to see how many people there are from around the world everywhere. It's incredible.
Yeah, really is. Yeah, there was a Malevolent fan meeting in Poland some while back. A bunch of Polish fans got together, and that is really cool that there is enough like fans internationally that they can do these meetups out in Europe. But yeah, everybody go check out Penelky and the Dreamlands. And the last one I want to bring up is, of course, my favorite of all of the bunch, and I have no reason to be biased about that, is Lovely, Dark, and Deep. It is a zine based around fairy tale AUs that myself and a couple of other people from the server are moderating for. We just closed our application period a week ago on November 1st for Lovely, Dark, and Deep, but we are getting that into production pretty soon. We have not sent the invites out yet. You will see those coming within the next week or so for acceptance, for response to those applications. I can only say that I can't guarantee that these things will be in the final product or it'll be exactly like this, because we obviously don't have, all of the completed works to print, but it's going to be a pretty hefty zine. We're doing print and merchandise for it, where it's going to be like about 20 different fics.
Wow.
Each one's going to have both a full page like cover art piece as well as spot artists done. So spot art done for each fic as well. Yeah, we're looking at for a 7x10 zine, I think KM estimated, we're looking at about a 200 page. We're really hoping that we can get enough sales to do hardcover for it, because then it'll be like a real hefty, like beautiful storybook. Yeah.
Wow.
It's
yeah,
a big
that
one.
would be amazing.
I think we got a total of like 99 applications between writers and artists.
Wow.
So a lot of interest in it. So we are so excited to be getting that one. The merch isn't set in stone, but we've tossed around the ideas of doing journals, pencil cases, bookmarks, as well as things like stickers. So yeah, really, really exciting. Come follow us on Tumblr, Twitter, or Instagram. We have a card, Malev Fairy Tale. I think it's Malev Fairy Tale zine. No, just malevfairytale.card.co. I set it up. Of course, I know what the URL is.
It's okay. I forget our URL all the time, and it's just Malevolent Autopsy. So
yeah, but yeah, please come follow us and we'll post updates regularly throughout the production.
Yeah, word of mouth is generally the best way to promote any project. And like, I think people really underestimate how much a single share on socials does, or how much just people talking about it will definitely drive up sales enough for the people who are going to purchase or interested in supporting the work to like actually be able to get really cool stuff. Because without word of mouth from the tarot zine, we wouldn't have been able to get as much stuff done and like those pretty foil edges and everything. So definitely please share about the fan projects that you think are cool, even if it's just like an idle like or reblog or retweet or whatever. Re-X, they still call it retweet if you're on X. Anyway,
nobody calls it X.
So I think that the best thing you can do to support any of these projects and anything that you want to get off the ground is to come on shows like this, or to talk about it in the Discord and get people really excited about it, because the more people talk about it, the more it sticks in your brain and you can do more cool stuff. And without word of mouth, Malevolent Autopsy would not have happened. So I think we're all very grateful for that.
Yeah, and you all should go tell your Malevolent friends about Malevolent Autopsy as well.
So, with that being said, I think we're going to close up. We've run a little late. Thank you guys for being patient with us. And also, thank you, Mizra, for being patient as our lovely main editor right now. Really appreciate all of your help. If you guys would like to listen to Malevolent Autopsy on other platforms, you can go to linktree/Malevolent Autopsy. That's linktr.ee/Malevolent Autopsy. Or on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts. You can also find us in the Discord on the Patreon stage. We stream once a week, every week, whether it's Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. Sometimes we even do like a weekday stream, just depending. And we would love to have new folks to join. So thank you so much, Lambda, for coming on. I have always such a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me on. Always a delight.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. And I will ask you if you remember what our call and response is.
Something about pissing out soda.
Oh my God. You little shit.
I have waited until I was back on mic to make that joke. I haven't even typed
You,
that in the Discord before.
you little shit. Oh my God.
Teehee.
Ugh. The horrors persist.
But so do we.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.